Vecchia here with the latest edition of the Armchair NBA. I'm really excited about this guest because he's a bit of an enigma to me. But before we jump in, just want to give a quick shout out to JSV Capital, sponsor of the Armchair NBA. Jason has announced he is doing classes, so you could become an affiliate JSV. You could set up your own shop. So once you attend this class, you can literally sell mortgages for businesses. You could sell merchant cash advances, other funding for businesses, as well as certain individuals. It's a great opportunity if you're looking to kind of get some additional revenue for your business, but also for your career. So check it out, JSV Capital, put a link below. And my special guest today, I don't think he needs much of an announcement because I know at this point a lot of people know who he is. But for those who don't, Lee Cole runs a show kind of within what we call the Mob 2 genre. I think I'm included that. I'm not sure. But with that being said, Lee Cole, welcome to the Armchair NBA. How you doing today?
Good, and I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. So I want to start off with, because again, I don't know much about you to be candid. So I want to start off with, where were you born? And then walk us through, give us kind of your formative years and what makes you you.
I was born in Rockland County. And that's right, a town called Spring Valley. It
Yeah,
was
absolutely.
on the hill back in those days. It's a lot different now.
Yeah.
And then from there, I moved to Westchester. Eventually, I wound up in New York City. And I spent a good majority of my life down in New York City during my first marriage. My son was born there, and spent a lot of time in Queens and Brooklyn.
Got it. So you grew up born in New York. They're very familiar with Rockland County. Actually, at Spring Valley, I believe there's a Ferrari dealership there now, if I'm not mistaken. But great area. So then you move in the boroughs. I get it. So who was Lee Cole in high school? Were you an academic guy? Were you token a little too much? Who were you in high school?
Well, in high school, I basically went to. I started off in Fox Lane, and that's in Bedford. And then I wound up my final years in Yonkers.
Oh, wow.
Because, my family moved around a lot. But New York was basically where we moved around. But, Yonkers was a different thing to me when I entered it because, I'm coming from Rockland County and Westchester into Yonkers, and it's just kind of a total culture shock.
Got it. And then, okay, so did you go to university right away? Did you work? And what was your path earlier on?
Well, basically what I did is I left home. I was brought up in a very tough home life, absent father, always working, and alcoholic mother. And I ran away from home and went to Times Square. And basically I was a runaway kid in Times Square. And that's in New York City. And I was 17 years old at that time.
Yeah, because I heard you mentioned you were like in the streets before and stuff. So in this particular case, you were really in the streets.
Yes.
Right. So let's kind of fast forward. Who were you in your 20s? What did you do? I kind of want to start setting all this up.
Okay. Well, I started off, I didn't have a job. So when I got to New York City, what I did is I went to a pizzeria on the corner of Avenues of America, right by the library there. And I worked at a pizza place. I worked about 90 hours a week.
Wow.
And at that time I was homeless, and the guy let me sleep in the basement and get up in the morning and work. And I was working 6-7 days a week. And because of that guy, I didn't wind up in the street like the rest of the young people that run away to that area.
All right. So I'm sensing, like many other situations, that by not having a steady father in the home, all that kind of stuff, without getting too Dr. Phil-ish, how did that kind of shape you as a man into your adulthood?
Well, I grew up pretty much literally in the streets, and when you're growing up in the streets like that and you're young, you learn the hard way. You're learning about life, you're learning about hustling, and you're learning about surviving.
Yeah.
And that's how I started off my teenage years. I dropped out of school, of course, and I was literally working in this, I always worked. That was the difference between me and those other kids that were on the streets.
Yeah.
a lot of them hustled and did bad stuff. Me, I always worked because I liked money. And, the more hours I worked, the more money I made and the more fun I can have. I was like living in Times Square, literally. I mean, and that you're talking about the 70s and 80s when Times Square was at its greatest level.
Yeah.
And I was like a kid in a candy store. I loved it.
Were you sleeping outside?
In the beginning, I was sleeping on, in the beginning I was, and then I would sleep in movie theaters. And eventually I got a fifth floor walk up down by the Palladium Theater right in Greenwich Village.
Yeah.
And for $85 a week. And the tub was right in the middle of the kitchen. It was one of those old tenement type apartments. And that was where I lived. And here I am, I'm 17 years old and I have my own apartment. I'm working like a dog. I'm working as many hours as I can. And so it was actually, I was having a great time because all the culture I was taking in, I never seen this culture before. And
Yeah.
It was just fascinating to me.
So, okay. Now, how long did it take to dig out of the hole to get into a regular apartment or home? And
Once I got in that apartment down by the Palladium, things settled down for me and I started working hard, but I started hanging around with a lot of street people. And by street people, I mean hustlers. I'm not talking like bums or anything like that. A lot of people that were like me, and they taught me the game of hustle on the streets and how to make money. And I'm not talking about making money like selling myself or anything like that. I'm talking about hustle.
I wasn't even thinking that.
Yeah, but that's exactly what happens though with a lot of those kids.
What?
It's not something that many people survive. Let me put it that way.
So, okay. So now, you kind of equilibrate a little bit, maybe go to street hustle, when did you first get married? How old were you, and how long were you married for your first marriage?
Well, what happened was, I went there and then actually I went up to the combat zone up in Boston, spent 2 years up there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was there for 2 years, and I had a very weird job there, but it was a job that I learned even more about the street, and that's when I started meeting like gangsters and real made guys, tough guys, and they kind of liked me and took me underneath their wing because they always seen that I hustled and I worked hard, and they basically taught me, how to survive, how to make extra money and stuff.
Well, I think what happens is a good chance for you to maybe address it is, you're Lee Cole. I have you as like the Texas guy, and you're opinionated. You trolled some people. We'll get into that a little bit, but for the most part, are like a strong force, right? You have a strong inflection.
I'm a New Yorker, people say, oh yeah, I live in Texas now. No, I'm a New Yorker.
Yeah.
I love New York, and I lived in New York for the first 32, 33 years of my life.
And I don't want to, but I don't want to jump over, why you started the YouTube. We'll get that in a minute. But, give us kind of like your experience, Boston, and then maybe New York, around being around, mobsters, Cosa Nostra, and were you also under or near any other type of organized crimes or ethnic groups?
Well, when I was up in Times Square, when I went from Times Square to Combat Zone, I went to work for a guy named Teddy Venus. Teddy Venus ran the whole entire Combat Zone, and our Jewel brothers, I believe it was, they were the families that ran that area, but Teddy basically got permission to open up his shops there. He had topless bars, and he also had the coin where you go put the coins in the machines and stuff and watch the dirty movies, the peep shows. And he had that, but he took a liking to me, and I was 18 years old, and he basically started taking me home every night, and I became part, wherever you seen Teddy, you see me with him. And Teddy was always teaching me and training me to streets, and he had bigger plans for me than I had when it came to being there. Let me put it that way.
Okay. Now, so you got a little bit of flavor, about the mob life. Did you participate? Were you running numbers? Did you have a half sheet? Did you, were you doing work? Like where did that kind of that line?
Well, what happened is I started running his girls on and off stage at the topless places. He put me in a place called the Boston Bunnies, and it was a pretty popular place. Another place was called the Sixes. And I worked both those places. And my job was to put the girls on and off stage and make sure that their pimps didn't come in, and keep an eye on things. And you had guys running the streets that basically the law ran the streets there, because the cops ran everything and they were paid off by Teddy. I used to witness these payoffs every night where, and Teddy used to actually hand me the money and tell me to go pay the cops off when they pulled up down by his office.
Yeah.
And I would just hand them a brown paper bag and they would say, thank you, and leave like it was nothing. Everybody's seen them getting handed the money, but they didn't care. That's just how everything worked with the cops back then and with those people in that area.
Yeah. Now, we're not going to talk about other people. We agreed on that, but I just want to, for example, I went on, Fat Paul Sicilian show, Chris's show a few times, and people were kind of getting on me a little bit. And the truth of the matter is, I don't believe in camps. I'm not into this mob tube drama. By me going on doesn't perpetuate it. By you having gone here, learning about it doesn't perpetuate it. You see that I'm actually interested in who you are. And what attracted me to Chris's show was, I had a brother who passed, and Chris is, and again, we're not, not judging anybody, but I was drawn to Chris because, he is clean and he had a rough go. And I wish that of my brother. I started to like you when I learned about your situation, and I'm sorry to hear about your brother. So, and it's a club you and I don't want to be in. You lose a sibling, it's a different.
I lost 3 in the last 3 years, 2 of them
Wow.
two to drug overdoses. I lost my sister Alice to fentanyl, and my brother Danny was popping pills, and
Wow.
he died about 2 years ago. So it's been three, and they're all the youngest brothers and sisters. And I came from a family of addiction, and I was probably the one person in the family that wasn't addicted. I don't drink, or I don't do drugs. I don't even smoke cigarettes.
Well, for those people that know, and I'm not a psychologist, but what happens is you have an emulator and you have a hero. An emulator follows what their parents does or what they see, which what my brother did, and will drink, do drugs, etc., because that's what they know, right? And then you have the hero that does the opposite of what they do, where they don't drink, they don't smoke. That's why when you said, hey, I don't do any drugs, I was going to bet you probably don't drink. And that follows what they call the hero path. So I'm really glad for you in that sense, Lee. So I do, I'm looking at your channel. So if I'm looking weird, I'm looking at your old channel. So I noticed you started off doing a little political stuff. I don't want to get into that because then we will get no views because YouTube will ban us. But your first thing was, I think, a really important was the WWE or WWF, when I grew up, Ring Boy scandal and an alleged cover-up. Are you allowed to speak to that? And if so, what can you tell us about it?
Well, in 1992, I put a lawsuit together for my brother, and we sued the WWE and WWF. The first time it was settled at a court. There's a book coming out next in the spring that's going to speak about it's Simon Schuster already has approved it. This is a very top-notch writer is writing the book, and we've done a lot on it already. It's going to talk about the autobiography of Vince McMahon and my brother. It's like a combination, the book, because of the lawsuit and the damage it did to the company and what happened where the company actually was saved. It's a very interesting story. Anybody knows me knows that when my brother hung himself, when I released the tweet, it got hundreds of thousands of views, and it's been just a very tough time. It just happened in February, February 12th. and
February 21.
12th, February 12th.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was right after my brother Danny died and my sister Alice. So my family's been like getting hit with these, one right after another. And what makes it the roughest, it's the younger people. But my brother had a lot of, he turned his life around. He became a bodyguard. He bought a beautiful house in Westchester County and lived in Fishkill. And as anybody knows, it's not cheap to live there.
A nice area.
And, he had $1 million house, a great, 3 beautiful girls and a wife. And it's, he talked to me, and 15 minutes after he talked to me, he hung himself. And what makes it tough is that conversation, I had no idea. He was just basically saying goodbye. And, and that's probably the most devastating thing to happen to me. And I flowed right from that into this insanity of YouTube. And in a way, YouTube kind of saved me because it took my mind off a lot of things.
Wow.
But it also made me a little bit mean too. And
Well, like I said, that's obviously a tough topic. My condolences to you and your family and his family. It's always rough. That's the other thing people think, oh, but they were so happy. No, it's a front. And, the signs of suicide are unfortunately sometimes like it's like there's a subtext, and they hide it externally, but they're really suffering inside. And if you know anybody, you suspect anybody, take action, because you know what, if they take the wrong action, it has devastating effects, obviously, for them and their family. So I want to keep it cooking. Again, my condolences again. So you got into the mob genre, right? So you first started about the online mob wars about 4 months. It looks like you kind of like started out as like almost like a I don't know.
I did a show one day with my son,
Yeah.
and it was I was reading about, I did it because of Sammy Gravano, because I found it quite fascinating that Sammy Gravano had went from being known as a rat and turned this empire, started this empire that he's building on YouTube. And the more I think about it, it's a pretty fascinating story, because the man went from being an absolute most hated man in the history of New York, then all of a sudden he's being accepted as a hero all of a sudden, and people love his stories. But he changed with the generation. A new generation came in, and the old generation that remembered him was dying away. Sammy Gravano outlived them all. And that's pretty much why he was able to create what he's created.
So you started analyzing. We're going to go through the progress. I want to start from earlier to where we are now. So you started out kind of analyzing, which makes sense. And this is the part that,
Oh, and just one thing I like to tell you, Doug.
Yeah.
I don't, and as for the WWE stuff, I don't really want to get into it because of the book being written, and because there's a lot of things I can't talk about yet, because that was the deal we made with the author.
I totally respect it, whether it's official NDA, handshake NDA, I totally get it. Okay, so you spike, I believe, to be a big interview 3 months ago with Jimmy Calandra, who is, as I understand, probably top 5 shows of the genre, a growing channel. To be candid, that's a score for a guy like you who's starting out. So, how did you get Jimmy? What were your initial thoughts of the interview?
Well, originally what happened is Jimmy and I just started talking. I kind of was hard on him when I first started doing the shows because I found out about the woman that got killed. And then as time went along, all of a sudden, Jimmy started leaving me little messages and stuff, and we started talking. And we got along great. But, right the day we were supposed to do our first interview, Jimmy knew I was putting a story together on Alan Kaiser, who was killed by Sammy Gravano, and he called me up and he said, "Lee, I just want to let you know that I'm pretty close with Sammy Gravano. Can you do me a favor and drop this story that you're
This
doing.
is after the interview, correct?
No, this is right the day of the interview.
Yikes.
I actually thought he was going to pull out of the interview.
Okay.
And it was kind of touch and go. So I said to him, I said, Jimmy, look, I understand how you feel about him, but I can't make you no promises. Let me think about it. Then he came on and did the interview. And here's where what people say, oh, the interview is what got me built. No, at that time, I was gaining 100 subscribers every day. I was up to almost 700 subscribers.
Yeah, but Lee, let's
Jimmy,
that was an accelerator.
Oh, let me finish. What happened though is when he came on, he got me from 7 over 1,000.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. He
Yeah.
spiked me. He got me like 400 subs in
It was an
one day.
accelerator.
In one day.
Yeah.
And that's the power Jimmy has.
Yeah.
But I would have gotten to the 1,000 no matter what, because I was building at that point to 1,000. It just would have been slower.
Okay. At least acknowledge that. Okay. So you had him on the interview. I believe I saw, I believe it was a good interview. Does a super standout? No, but I remember it being a good interview. And I'm like, who the hell is this Lee Cole guy? Okay. So he accelerates a little bit, right? And then you kind of, you did a Frank Cali piece, which is super fascinating. And then you just went straight for A-Light. Why the pivot and why so hard on A-Light at the time?
Because I got caught up in the Gotti thing. When you meet somebody.
What do you mean by that?
I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
Okay. I got caught up in the Gotti thing. Everybody does. All of a sudden, you meet somebody with the last name of Gotti, and they're tied to a Gotti. See, here's what happened. I worked for John DiGiorgio, who was married, who's the brother of Vicky DiGiorgio. And I worked for him for 2 years. And then when I mentioned his name to Angel, Angel knew who I was talking about. And he became a recluse, and he's down in Florida now, and he's not really part of the family anymore. But back when I worked for him, he had a lot to do with the family. He basically was a very smart man. He was a money man. He worked for Lehman Brothers when they went under. I don't know if you remember that whole thing.
Of course I do.
Where they were all tied into the mob.
My buddy of mine worked for Arthur Anderson. If you remember that.
Yes.
Stuff in that scandal.
Yeah, and so he was part of that. He actually worked at Lehman Brothers, and he was part of that scam. And but when I went to work for him in Somers, I went to work with him and another guy named Glenn Bernardi. And Glenn eventually owned a bunch of, he owned some topless places in New York. These are 2 pretty big guys I was working for. Glenn wasn't made. I don't think John was, but they were still very high up and they knew a lot of people.
Yeah, but hold on, but I need you to close the loop for me on, at this point, you interview Jimmy, maybe who reached out first? Did Angel? Now I get the backdrop. Did you reach out to Angel? Angel reach out to you? Did somebody else from the family reach out? Who reached out to who?
I remember I sent her a message and she called me back.
Okay.
And that was a big surprise when she called me. And then we started talking about John DiGiorgio. And then it went on from there. And but that didn't work out.
Hold on, but so you're building up your show, right? And you had a great interview. And people that have a podcast like myself, you generally try to find your lane, right? The first to tell you, I can never carry a show by myself doing a monologue. I would not do well. My strength is meeting with people, engaging people, and having good conversations. And people generally like to listen to them, right? For the most part, if they're interested in the person or learning about them, right? Kind of like what we're doing today, right?
Yeah, and let me just say one thing about Jimmy Calandra. I didn't even know who he was. I knew nothing about the Bath Avenue boys. I called them the Bath Beach.
I remember that. Yeah.
No, I didn't know anything. If I had an interview with him now, it would be 10 times better than that interview.
Well, that's what sucks. It's weird. You can reach out to a billionaire and they will charge you $15,000 an hour for consulting, but they will come on your podcast for free. It's weird. People, when they hear podcasts, they love it, no matter small, no matter big. And generally earlier on in your podcast, you're aggressive. You're like that, "Oh, George," and like you'd like get really aggressive, and get big people. And what happens is you suck at interviewing, right? So like I wish I had half the interviews that I had back then. I'm going to reach out to some people again, but I've flubbed some pretty big ones. Now it's a whole different ball game, right? But what I'm trying to get at is what I'm trying to unpack is why exactly the pivot to going from the interview guy, a great even that interview was good, I thought, to let me go after A-Light, but let me go after him pretty hard. Give me that inflection point.
Well, because that was the in thing to do. That's what everybody was doing. And I became part of that, If I could change it now, I would change it,
Got it.
But I got involved in stuff that I didn't understand in the beginning that I understand a lot better now.
Got it.
And, all of a sudden I'm coming into this whole thing and it starts taking off and I'm like, wow. And you get caught up in everything. You're like, okay, you're going to get the views by going after A-Light. You're going to get more subscribers by going after A-Light. If I could do it all over again, I wouldn't have done it the way I've done it. But
Okay.
I can't do it all over again.
Got it. Now, this is the part that we got to reconcile, or at least I can't remember agree with all of it, but just so I can understand. Okay. So now Jimmy, right? You kind of have a falling out with him specifically. What happened there exactly?
Well, it was funny because one day we were talking and then he didn't call me for a couple of days. I had a funny feeling that he was upset about the Sammy Gravano thing because I just did the Alan Kaiser story.
Yeah.
And he was upset because from what I understand, Sammy didn't like the story at all. And then Jimmy was having some issues with Jimmy over this. And that was that. And then Jimmy came on. There's just some people that like to vent their business to the audience. And that's what Jimmy did. He vented his business to his audience and saying, I have nothing to do with Lee Cole no more. And instead of me sitting back and once again, a mistake, I should have just sat back and said, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
But me being who I am, and a lot of this has to do with what I was going through, a lot of emotionally in my life.
I had misplaced anger.
Yeah. Anger and attacking, and I'm trying to learn not to do that so much now, because that was a major mistake that I made during the growing period, the first month or two.
Okay. Now, where do you land with Jimmy now? Are you okay, or are you guys still at odds?
Listen, Jimmy doesn't talk to me. I don't talk to Jimmy. God bless him. That's that. I'm not gonna, I made a commitment this week that I'm not gonna fight with these guys. I'm gonna put out my stories.
Okay.
And take it from there. And if my show does well, it will be based on me doing stories. And one thing that I didn't do and I took for granted, I didn't basically research enough. Now I'm a research buff. I research everything now. Because when you make silly mistakes.
But then, all right, I want to fast forward a little bit because there's a lot to cover. So then, listen, in terms of the mob space, right? Let's just call it what it is. Jimmy Calandro is what it called a good get. Like that was you landed a good one there, right? In terms of audience and notability, et cetera, right? And then you get Jimmy and Johnny A-Light. No matter what you think about them, Johnny A-Light does produce decent numbers, especially for a podcast that's been out a few months. No matter what anybody thinks or says, this is a numerical fact, right? So you land Jimmy and John, and I saw you took like the hardball route. Are you okay with the strategy you took with Johnny A-Light on the interview, or would you have changed it in retrospect?
It was a lousy interview because, first of all, he was doing it from his phone and there was a lot of interference.
Yeah.
And John A-Light has a reputation. If you piss him off during an interview, he'll just walk away. So basically what I was doing is throwing questions at him. And the biggest mistake I made is not following the questions up. But I know if I did that, he would have basically said, look, my phone's not working. I lost, and walked away. And I asked him as many questions as I could ask him. And what I did is I took the questions from the audience. and they basically gave me, they basically gave me all the questions, and I asked him those questions.
Okay.
And I thought that would keep it fair and show that, I wasn't covering up for him. I wanted to ask him tough questions. And they were tough questions if you listen to them. The biggest mistake was not following up on them. Like when I do interviews, like with Hootie or something, I followed up on everything and I would hit him hard. With him, I didn't do that.
Got it. But listen, all fairness, it's not easy. If you're a newer interviewer interviewing somebody who is an experienced interviewee, they tend to hijack it. They tend to give elongated answers, and it's not easy. But what I found strange was, and I know I glossed over it, you hooked up with Candace Shades as a co-host, which I thought you guys had a very good energy, right?
Yes.
And then what happened? He had a moral aversion to being on with
Yes.
John Eli, correct?
Yeah, well, he told me, he said that he can't ride with the A-lights. I respected that. And he went and did his own show. Him and I are still friends. We talk all the time.
But here's what I don't get. There's like an extreme, right? So you already did Jimmy Calandra. Was he like, hey, I'll give you that one because it passed, but moving forward, we don't want any informants. Like, I just want to get the context because I respect his decision, but why not, pause for the show? Hey, I'm not on this one. I'm going to sit this one out, but then pop in the next one that's appropriate. Like, why? Like, your life seems, with all due respect, seems extreme.
Oh, without a doubt.
So why go from like a partner to, and I can't talk, right, to one day being gone, right? But to having a partner and then one day poof, what happened there?
Well, he wasn't, you got to remember, Kane Shade and I just started off. I mean, Fat Bald Sicilian used to come on my show all the time too in the beginning. Yeah. And, but Fat Bald Sicilian had his own thing, and I always knew that he was going to move over to his thing. With Kane Shade, it was more permanent. But Kane Shade told me, he said, I'm not going to ride with the A-lights.
No, which I get, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is either you got to pick a lane, right? It's either, hey, I'm going down this route, go pound salt, right? Or, hey, listen, let's negotiate. Sit out for this series and then come back, and then we can get the show back on track. I think the show deserves this. It'll help the numbers. It'll help the exposure. Did you guys have that dialogue?
No, he was going no matter what. He didn't want any. He told me, if you're going to interview them, and this is where I told him, I said, look, I'm sorry, I'm going to interview them. And he made up his mind, and that's why I think he made his mistake.
So hold on. So you felt, and there's no wrong answer, doesn't make you a bad guy, but you felt the value of the A-Light interviewer series was greater than the future partnership with Candace Shades.
Yes.
Okay, good. That's, at least you're honest, right? All right. So you have A-Light on, good numbers there. But then there was some backlash, right? Some backlash. But then what I found odd, and this is where you kind of lost me back then, was I'm a double agent. I had to do like good things to bad people. I didn't want everybody to know my plan. So it's like you had him on to almost like expose him, and he had some tapes. Yes. And that's where it got a little loopy. Just help me reconcile that. I know.
Okay. There were a lot of tapes done.
Yeah.
And after releasing a couple of them with Jimmy, I come to the conclusion it wasn't worth doing it because of all the backlash. And
but why have tapes to begin with? Like, is it like, we're not in law enforcement? Like, I don't think you and I are gotcha podcasters. So, what was the, I guess, the objective of the tapes that you had?
Show what dirtbags they were, but it was a mistake by me. That's what it comes down to. Because one thing I've learned throughout this whole thing, nobody's good in this mafia genre. Very few people are. Yeah. Okay. And if I could treat it different now, I would treat it different now. I was so set on catching the A-Lights, Gene Barillo, and cornering them and getting the goods on them.
Got it. Yeah, but then why not have a dialogue with your partner and say, hey, listen, sit out this one. Either tell them, because you got to trust them as a partner, or trust me on this.
I did have that dialogue with him.
Got it. And just didn't pan out. Okay. I don't want to spend too
Yeah,
much.
it just didn't pan out.
I
Yes,
like Kenneth Shades. He seems like a good guy.
he is a very good guy. Yeah.
Okay. So then, before we get to FBS and stuff, Angel Gotti, right? It seems like you guys were close, and then like you were, and then you were.
No, it's never were. We never
Okay.
were. We were and we weren't. That's that.
Got it.
It's no in between.
Okay, so I'm just gonna ask the question because I didn't watch the show.
I'll be honest with you. I'd rather not talk about Angel Gotti right now
Okay,
because
okay.
it's just going to go in a bad spot.
Okay.
And this ain't about her right now. And
Well, here's what I'm getting at, and then we'll bring up one or two more people, then we'll talk about what's going on recently in your show. The part that fascinates me is generally you have guests on, right?
yes.
And then you either like keep casual contact, and then they become either recurring guests or keep casual contact, or you generally disengage and you check in at certain points, right? You have a habit of like sticking on to your guests, which is okay, that's an admirable thing, but then you wind up like being at odds like pretty quickly, like almost at a turn of.
Give me an example of who.
Okay, so Jimmy Calandras, I understand,
Okay.
got on, turned, right? You were going in amicably with a light, that turned. You were good with Candace Shades, that turned.
No, it didn't turn. Nothing turned with Kane
Not turn, but what I'm saying, it turned.
No, there was no turn in there. Kane Shade went and did his own thing.
No, I get that, but what I'm saying is, if you don't have a light on, like, listen, these numbers are low, right? And thank you again, because I'm over 8,000, and I appreciate each and every sub, right? However, even my show, these are small numbers.
Yes.
In the YouTube world, right? Again, I have a younger friend. He's like a younger guy. He was kind of working as a client. He has 400,000 subs doing like the kiddie stuff, like the 2 a.m. challenges, right? But my point being is we're doing smaller numbers, right? That's a smaller niche, but we're doing smaller numbers, right? So what I'm saying is whenever you keep splitting off these folks, right, you're going to divide your numbers by half. Right now, you may not care about, subscriber growth, or you might rather be, go deeper, like an inch wide, mile deep with your current audience than going bigger, right? So like, let's continue. So we'll put Angel behind us. And then I believe you started before FBS, correct? Around the same time.
We started the same week.
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
So then you guys really like were collaborating. I think you were on each other's show. Like you popped in. Like it seemed like you guys had a good jam. What happened there? Because that part I don't know. And it'd be nice because I'm friendly with Chris, but what happened from your opinion with him?
We just don't have the same thought process every time. The biggest problem I ever had with Chris is if he ever had an issue with me, he never came to me about it. He went to his audience and talked about it. And I just didn't, I thought it didn't make no sense to me. Like, it was always to his audience. Like if he was mad at me about something, instead of picking up the phone and calling me, he went to his audience and talked to them about it. And that basically, at that point, it started getting ridiculous. And listen, I'm to blame as much as he's to blame.
Got it.
I'm not going to say that he's one person.
Here's the part that I don't get, right? And this is coming from a good place, right? So now we mentioned a few people. We're not getting into Jeff Nadeau. We're not getting into Gene Barillo. We're not getting into, I think there's one or two other ones. It just seems that like you kind of have people on, right? And I'm not giving you the hardball interview. I'm just being honest. You have people on and you generally like fall out with them. Is this a pattern you have?
Tell me who.
Well, Jeff Nadeau, right? So Jeff Nadeau came on.
Jeff Nadeau fell out with everybody. Jeff Nadeau.
I'm not talking to everybody. What I'm saying is, I believe he was on your show, and there was one time, and I don't know him well, but there was one time where like you guys were kind of at odds, right? And he was like trying to patch up. He was saying open-ended comments or close-ended comments to kind of close out the loop. He was trying to keep it cordial. I don't think you liked them. Like it just seems for whatever reason.
Politics had a lot to do with it.
Okay. So maybe now that you vet a little better, like before you might have had too low of a gate for guests. Now that you vet more, do you envision yourself being more amicable to your guests?
It depends. I mean, I can't say that. You and I have had no issues.
Correct.
Me and Gunner have had no issues.
Yeah.
There's just certain people that I trust.
Yeah.
I trust Gunner. And people say, oh, Gunner comes on your show and talks away. Yeah, he does. But you know what? He sends me emails. We have good conversations, and there's no backstabbing going on amongst us.
Well, I'll give you I'll give you credit. You did call me a clown on your show, but we did talk. You did apologize. And listen, sometimes you get caught up in the mix. And I'm not worried about that. I've been called much worse things, but I felt you were a gentleman about it, right? So now in the mob genre,
I was wrong because I didn't know you. And that's once again getting caught up in the extreme. Like, we decide who to go after, and we go after those people without knowing them.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know much about Panisi, but I should have kept it Panisi, to be honest with you, because now that I know you, it wasn't a good move. But it was the same thing with you and Sicilian. Same thing. Once you get to know somebody, you look at things different.
Got it. All right.
But listen, you got to remember, this is a learning process. And that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to learn. I'll give you an example. Everything that happened yesterday, I
want to reserve yesterday to the end.
Okay.
I'm just trying to show the arc here. So then there's like some newer players in the space, right? That kind of came on.
Always. Let me just say one thing, Tom.
Yeah.
Someone pops up new all the time, and it's like, oh my God, where do they come from? Yeah. It's just happens all the time in this genre.
Got it. And there's a few others like Tony Pizza. Were you friendly with him, or were you the contrary?
I've never had an issue with Tony. Tony's Tony. And a matter of fact, I shouted out Tony. Tony thanked me for shouting him out. And matter of fact, Tony's exact words, yeah, Lee Cole, I appreciate you shouting me out, but fuck you too. So that's Tony. Yeah. So, no, I like him. I have no problem with Tony.
But here's the thing though, like to me, and I have this weird thing where I look at how people treat me directly, right? Not like, now obviously if you did certain things, but we talked about this on your show. I kind of weigh in on people how they do it directly. I find you to be a gentleman. We got along. You're very persistent in a good way. I know you're going to be successful. But like, it seems like, what is the biggest mistake you've done so far that's tough for you to admit? Because, you're not a young guy, it's like, okay, take on this.
Listen to people, judging people by what other people think of them. John A. Light, Gene Murillo. What I've learned is those people are no worse than the people that are attacking them. That's what I've learned. And people may not like the fact I say that, but you know what? It wasn't Gene Murillo and John A. Light that called me a child molester or bring people on the shows. It's not them doing it. It's the people that go after them that are doing that.
Yeah. Now, self-awareness is critical, right? We all know that. And without saying names, because I'm good with some of them, some that I don't even know. And I'm not trying to shout out too many names either, because I don't want to dilute the argument. But there's some people that have a class A hard-on for you.
Yes.
Why do you think? Now, wear their hat, not I don't need you to defend, because I like you. That's why you're here. But why do you think some people have like a class A hard-on for you?
Because I don't take shit. That's what it is, and I'm going to tell you what. In this mafia genre, if you don't have the makeup, you're not going to make it, because it's vicious, it's ugly. You got not only that, then you have a bunch of people that come and choose sides. The attacks that go on in the chat rooms are unbelievable. The calls you get on your phone, when I got docs, I still got people to this day calling me, and it's on and on. This is not. If you don't have the makeup here, if you're not prepared to handle, and I said this to you, Tom, you know that. Yeah. I said, if you can't handle it, don't do it, and they can attack me all they want. But you know what? The more they attack me, the more loyal the people on my shows become. And
well, let me ask you this, though. do you care more about intent or outcome? And here's what I mean. So as I understand, Thin Gray Line accidentally, showed your number to the screen accidentally. Maybe you don't think you didn't, but let's operate that it was accidental. I don't think, especially being I think I understand ex law enforcement or law enforcement. Again, I don't know him, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, right? So the intent was to show something, but the outcome was terrible, right?
Yes.
Do you judge on outcome or on intent?
With him, I choose on outcome because of all the stuff he's done, not just with me. But I'll just leave it at that. No, I don't have no passion for that man whatsoever in a positive way.
Got it. Now, let's not here to bash this, really to learn more about.
I'm not bashing nobody. I'm just telling you.
No, what I'm saying, I know what I'm saying is the reason why I brought up some of the people you have beef with. I was just trying to get the context as to why, right? So who is Lee Cole? What when you're not on air and you're not thinking about the podcast, what are you doing with who you're spending your time with?
Right now, I'm dealing with a lot of negativity because of the fact that the people I care for are sick or dying or have died. I've gone through my whole life without having to deal with a lot of death. And for the last couple of years, there's been an extreme amount of deaths, people close to you. I have some of them that I care for very much is very sick right now. And on top of that, though, in this genre, when people see this, that's when they go for the throat. I mean, when you bring my son on, this is like, you can't be any lower. And this ain't me doing it. I get the opportunity all the time where people say, look, I know a lot of stuff from this person. I want to come on and talk about them, but I won't bring them on, and it's like when I got doxxed. I have everybody's phone number. I never put nobody's phone number out there, and I wouldn't do it.
Did you have to change your number or
No, I didn't change my number. It was like the point. Why should I change my number?
Yeah.
I've had it for years, and no, I didn't change the number, and I'm not going to change my number.
But not trying to talk you out of it because I love you as a colleague, but you're well astute on politics, which we won't go deep on. You live in Texas. You are you believe in free speech, and you get a lot of great attributes, and you're extremely intelligent. I think you have an educational background on addiction. Unfortunately, you personally dealt with loss. Why? And these other, if you were to do a YouTube channel, those verticals are like 100x potential versus the mob genre. So why the mob genre? And are you going to kind of stick with it, or should we expect Lee Cole to pivot a little bit outside of the bubble?
Oh, definitely pivot. There's a lot of things coming up, especially with the book coming up, and I know it's going to do really well. There'll be a pivot, but I'm also going to stick in here. What I'm doing right now is I'm actually doing, this is the commitment I made, is that I'm going to actually do stuff with mafia genre and actually do stuff along those lines. And I'm not going to be pulled back into these fights. I could be in one right now, but I'm not going to do it.
I hope so. Well, let me ask you, because I personally tend to go on like binges, right? Like right now, I'm really hot on the Sicilians, some of the clobbering stuff, and how it ties to the US, like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the Bananos, Gambinos, and that reflects in my show, and I'm trying to cover some of those contents. What areas of Cosa Nostra history interest you and why?
Definitely more. I'm more of a U.S. guy. Don't get me wrong. I've done a lot of studying on.
Yeah.
I'm doing more and more study. I love to read.
Yeah.
I may not pronounce names and stuff that well, but I'm currently in school.
Yeah.
I'm finishing off another bachelor's degree,
Good
and it's going to be done my grade point average is 4.0. People say, oh, bullshit. But it is. And I find school very easy. But at the same time, I'm doing school right now with this. So it's kind of like taking me away from schooling a little bit.
Yeah.
But I like learning about everything. You know what I find is I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning because I would speak about things that I only know 50%. So what I do now is I read on everything and make sure I know it 100%. And that's why you're going to see less mistakes. And then if someone corrects me, I'm going to listen to that correction. There's a lot of people that come and watch these shows that are much more knowledgeable than I could ever be. And those are the people, I have people talking to me all the time, real hardcore Italian guys that we email, we talk. I talk to old street guys that are actually made, and now they're on the shelf, or they're old timers. Once everything fell apart, they got out of prison, and of course there's no place for them to go back to. And I talk to some of these guys.
Yeah, but why not do content that I'm going to tell you I'm going to give you some free advice. Here's where you can win, right? So a lot of people don't know this, but the mafia in the US did not start in New York, actually started out in New Orleans. La Manoneta, the Black Hand. And that migrated to the Sicilian mafia. So it actually started out in New Orleans, right? Number two, there was a Dallas family, and nothing to do with the Newark base, but the Campisi family were big. Also, the Galveston family that was at the Maceos.
You hold on one second. I just want to answer this.
Yeah. So we had to pause for a second, and again, I'm just giving it. So where I know you could win, right? So you had like the New Orleans mob all the way to Marcello, and there's still some inklings. You had the Dallas mob, the Campisis, the Galveston guys, Maceo. And as you know, the Fertittis were involved with that, right? Tobin Fertitti's grandfather, the father, the Fertitti brothers, their grandfather might have been the same person. And they kind of went to Vegas, and then you kind of had the guy with Binions. What I'm saying is, like, there's a lot of OC Cosa Nostra rich history in your neck of the woods that are right up your alley. Why not spend some time on that? Because I think you did a home run, Lee.
Because I'm a New Yorker, and I'm not a Texan, and I live in Texas. I came here to live comfortable final years of my life, probably, because this is where a guy like me belongs. Yeah. But I am a New Yorker. I've always been fascinated, and I've been around these guys. Got it. It's not like I haven't been around these guys.
I got it. Now
a lot of these guys that talk about it, I'll hear like this: "Oh, Lee's not from New York. What does he know about New York?" and stuff like that. But usually, I know 10 times more than they know.
Now, I want to go behind the scenes of Lee Cole 111 Inc., right? Do you plan out your content and you have a content calendar, or you just jump on every week and figure, hey, that's on the fly? No wrong answer, but are you more on the fly guy?
I've been doing a lot more planning out now than I used to do, without a doubt. I think about the shows I'm going to do, and then I do them. If you look at the last 3-4 days, they've been thought out. A matter of fact, I did a show about Sammy the other day, Sammy Gravano. I dislike him, but it's still fascinating what he's done.
Yeah, no, you agree.
And I did a show specifically on that, how this man has literally turned his whole everything, just the way it's been turned around, how his son Gerard helped him, and it's a pretty incredible story.
And what's your objective? Is this, is it maybe passive income? Not passive, but a supplemental income? Is it maybe to grow your own personal brand? Is it a hobby? Is it to get away, get away from the doldrums of life? Like, what's your candid objective towards your channel?
I don't know yet. I wish that I did know. I'm not in a position where I'm a 35-year-old man. I am a 60-year-old man. I have to look at life different than a 40-year-old man. And I'm not looking to, I don't even have a cash app. I'm not looking to make money off this. Every once in a while, I make a little bit of money every month, but it's still extra money. And it's literally like having a part-time job now. And I pay taxes, and just like you're supposed to do. But if I went out and got a part-time job, I'd be making as much as I am making now.
So,
And,
yeah. Okay.
but
So-
I don't live off like I need to make this amount of money. I don't live off like I need a cash app. And don't get me wrong, this is a business. I have no
Hold on.
disrespect.
In all fairness, right? As content creators, we are entitled to
Yes,
earn a living off of
without a
what we do,
doubt.
whether it's part-time, full-time, or just gas money, right? And then you're a freedom guy. We also should have the freedom to do it the way we want, right? Now, again, I chose a traditional sponsorship model because that's just what works for me, right? For some people, they might not, because you have not that I'm muzzled in any way, but sometimes when you get sponsors, it's tricky because you got to keep them happy. But then you also, by the way, JSV Capital, jsvcapital.com, check the link below. But you got to keep them happy. But the same token, like you sometimes maybe hooving, right? Some people do a cash app because they get killed on the super chats. So like, I know what you're saying, but like everybody kind of has a different model, right?
Yes.
Do you respect people that do that, whatever lane they're in? Or is there some criticism?
Well, it depends.
Yeah.
I look at a guy like FBS. I respect him for doing it as a business because he's legitimately putting out a business.
Yeah.
And then I look at guys like Stacks, who last night was running a show, and underneath in a stream he had, here's my cash app. It was flowing to the whole damn show.
But listen, you and I are freedom of speech guys. You and I are freedom guys. We probably have a lot in common politically and socially, which we will not talk about because I want to get views. I think your thread is, you may not disagree with how they do it, but I think you can agree with their right to do it, no?
Oh, without a doubt. Hey, listen, people want to send you money. No one's forcing them to send you money. It's a matter of fact, I had this conversation with FBS. He was kind of weary about the money situation. And I said to him, you're putting out a product. You should put up your apps and you should make the money you're making. But he's earned it more than other people. That's what I'm trying to say. I might have my differences from him, but he puts in 2 shows a week, or 2 shows a night sometimes, and takes a lot of time out of his life, and he gets the hell abused out of him. So yeah, he earns it.
That makes sense. Okay, so I had to pause again, but so Lee, just wrap it up. How, what can we expect in the future from Lee Cole?
I'm going to be doing shows. I'm going to stay away from the bullshit, and that's what I'm going to be doing. I could easily be, like I said, I could easily be in it now, but I'm not going to do it because what I like the most is I've been putting out good stuff for the last week, and people have been saying to me, "Hey, Lee, you've been putting out really good stuff." I'll give you another example. I put up a show. I was going to counterattack something that happened last night, and I put a thing up, and then I had a bunch of people that watched my show get a hold of me and said, "Lee, don't do it. You're doing really good right now. Just stay on your path." And I needed to hear from those people.
Awesome.
And you know what I did? I took the show down. I said, I'm not going to do it. I said what I had to say this morning, a little clip. It wasn't like too attacking nobody hard. And that's that. And if people want to go out and find stuff, God bless them. I'm not going to get into it.
I appreciate that. I believe in your show. I believe in you. I'm glad we spoke. I know you're going to take the high road. So we're going to jump off. How can people find you for those who don't know who you are?
Lee Cole 3, just three number ones, and I'll pop right up. And if you put Lee Cole WWE or Lee Cole Tom Cole in, I pop up everywhere.
Awesome.
And thanks to Sammy, and thanks to Jimmy Calandra, if you put in Sammy Gobano and Jimmy Calandra, my name pops right up between them.
Got it. Listen, Lee, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for being on the Armchair NBA podcast. Thank you so much.
Okay, I appreciate it, man. Take